A warm welcome to the headlines. I'm James Carter, and this is the hour you need to know. Like and subscribe to stay informed.
And what a day it's been in Westminster. The Labour government is facing some of its toughest questions yet, just 5 months after their landslide election victory in July. Today, we're diving deep into 3 major stories that are shaking up British politics right now. First up, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has come out fighting, defending his Chancellor Rachel Reeves against explosive accusations that she misled both the public and her own cabinet about the state of Britain's finances before last week's controversial budget. This story has serious implications for trust in government. Second, a truly extraordinary development involving a Labour MP who's just been sentenced to prison in Bangladesh. Yes, you heard that right. We'll explain what's happened to Tulip Siddiq and why it matters for British politics. And third, we'll look at the remarkable rise of Reform UK, Nigel Farage's party, which is now claiming more members than the Conservative Party itself. Let's get into it. Right, let's start with the big one, the budget controversy that's got Westminster absolutely buzzing today. Imagine this, you're Chancellor of the Exchequer, you go on television and tell the entire country that you need to raise taxes by £26 billion because there's a massive hole in the public finances. Except there isn't. Or at least, not as big as you suggested. That's essentially what opposition parties and even some Labour ministers are now accusing Rachel Reeves of doing. And it's turned into a full-blown crisis of credibility for this government. Let's rewind a bit. When Labour won power in July, they inherited what they described as a £22 billion black hole in public finances left by the previous Conservative government. From day one, Rachel Reeves made it clear that difficult decisions would be needed. She cut winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners. She means-tested benefits. All while saying these painful choices were necessary because of the terrible state of the economy she'd inherited. Then came November. On the 4th of November, Reeves gave a big speech warning that poor productivity growth would have consequences for the public finances and that families would need to do their bit to plug the gap. This set the stage for what many expected would be a brutal budget with significant tax rises, possibly even breaking Labour's manifesto promise not to raise income tax. Here's where it gets really interesting and really controversial. Documents from the Office for Budget Responsibility, which we've now seen, reveal that actually, as far back as the 17th of September, the OBR had told Rachel Reeves that improved tax revenues meant the fiscal picture was better than expected. In fact, by late October, she had a £4.2 billion surplus. Not a deficit. Let that sink in. The Chancellor was warned publicly about a massive black hole whilst privately knowing the numbers were actually looking up. What's more, according to reports in the Times and other newspapers, only Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves knew about these improved forecasts. The rest of the cabinet was apparently kept in the dark. One cabinet minister told the Times, and I quote, "Why did Keir and Rachel allow the country to believe for so long that we would break our manifesto by putting up income tax by 2p when they would have known that wasn't true?" Today, Monday the 1st of December, Keir Starmer held a speech at a community centre in London where he came out swinging. He insisted repeatedly that there was no misleading. He defended the decision to raise taxes, arguing that after 14 years of Conservative government, the public finances were in total crisis, and the government had to make tough choices. Starmer said, and I'm quoting directly here, "We inherited public finances and public services in total crisis." He added that his government had to ask people to contribute more to fix the problems left behind. Rachel Reeves, for her part, has pointed to the OBR downgrade of productivity forecasts, saying this had a big impact on the public finances, which justified asking for more revenue. But critics aren't buying it. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride has written to the Financial Conduct Authority demanding they investigate potential market manipulation from Labour's misleading pre-budget statements. That's a serious allegation. He's essentially suggesting that the government deliberately spooked the markets to justify tax rises. Stephen Flynn, the SNP's Westminster leader, has called for an immediate investigation, questioning whether Reeves's speech amounts to market manipulation. This matters for several reasons. First, it's about trust. Labour won power promising to be different from the Conservatives, promising integrity and straight talking after years of what many saw as chaos and sleaze. If it turns out they've been less than honest about the economic picture, That's a massive problem for their credibility. Second, it's about the budget itself. The government raised £26 billion in new taxes. National insurance for employers is going up significantly. Tax thresholds remain frozen. If these increases weren't actually necessary, or at least not as necessary as presented, then businesses and workers have a right to be pretty angry. Third, political ramifications. Labour's poll ratings have been dropping steadily since they took office. Keir Starmer's approval rating is now at just 25%, making him one of the least popular prime ministers on record this early in a term. This controversy could make things even worse. The pressure is mounting for an independent inquiry. The opposition smells blood and won't let this go. We can expect more questions at this week's Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the government will be hoping other stories take over the news cycle, but with ministers now publicly expressing frustration, this could rumble on for weeks. £26 billion, total tax rises in the budget. £4.2 billion, surplus Reeves actually had by late October. 25%, Starmer's current approval rating. 5 months time Labour has been in power. September 17, date OBR informed Reeves of improved forecasts. Now let's talk about a truly extraordinary story that broke in the early hours of this morning. One that sounds almost like something from a political thriller, but it's completely real. Tulip Siddiq, a Labour MP who until very recently was a government minister responsible for tackling corruption in the UK's financial markets, has been sentenced to 2 years in prison. Not here in Britain, but in Bangladesh. And yes, the irony of the anti-corruption minister facing corruption charges is not lost on anyone. Tulip Siddiq is the MP for Hampstead and Highgate in North London. But she's also the niece of Sheikh Hasina, who was until August of this year the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Hasina ruled the country for over 20 years, but was forced to flee to India in August after mass protests accused her government of corruption, oppression, and various human rights abuses. Since Hasina's fall, Bangladesh's Anti-Corruption Commission has been investigating allegations that her government embezzled billions of pounds from major infrastructure projects. And Siddiq's name has come up repeatedly. The main allegation: that back in 2013, Siddiq helped broker a nuclear power plant deal between Bangladesh and Russia worth billions. There are claims that massive sums, we're talking about £1 billion or more, were siphoned off from this project. This morning, a court in Dhaka, Bangladesh's capital, found Tulip Siddiq guilty of corruption. Specifically, the judge said she corruptly influenced her aunt to help her mother and siblings obtain plots of land in a government project in Dhaka's diplomatic zone. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison and fined. Her aunt, Sheikh Hasina, got 5 years, her mother got 7 years, all were tried in absentia, meaning they weren't there. They're all outside Bangladesh now. Siddiq has consistently denied all allegations. In a statement today, she called the trial a persecution and a farce, built on fabricated accusations and driven by a clear political vendetta. She described it as a kangaroo court, with a predictable and unjustified outcome. Her supporters argue this is politically motivated, that Bangladesh's new government, which is opposed to Hasina's party, is using the courts to go after the former Prime Minister's family. Here's the thing: the UK doesn't have an extradition treaty with Bangladesh, so Siddiq won't actually be going to prison. She's a British citizen, she lives in Britain, and there's no legal mechanism to force her to return to Bangladesh. But politically, this is devastating. Siddiq had already resigned as city minister in January of this year when these allegations first emerged publicly. She'd been in the role for less than 6 months. The bitter irony: she was responsible for regulating corruption in financial markets whilst being accused of corruption herself. For Keir Starmer, this is another headache. Back in December, when these allegations first surfaced, he backed Siddiq, saying she denied any involvement. Now she's been convicted, albeit in a trial critics call politically motivated and unfair, and questions will be asked about his judgment. The broader issue here is about ministers with complex international connections. Siddiq's family history and ties to Bangladeshi politics have always been known. Her grandfather, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was Bangladesh's founding leader. Politics runs deep in her family. But when does that become a conflict of interest? Opposition parties are already calling for an investigation into whether Siddiq should face any consequences here in the UK. The Conservatives want to know what due diligence was done before she was given such a sensitive ministerial role. Expect this story to develop over coming days. Siddiq will likely face questions from constituents about whether she can effectively represent them whilst dealing with these serious allegations. We might see an investigation by Parliament's Standards Committee. Meanwhile, Bangladesh has issued an arrest warrant for Siddiq, though it's essentially unenforceable. The case also raises questions about how democratic and fair Bangladesh's current legal system is, with human rights groups expressing concern about politically motivated prosecutions. 2 years, Siddiq's prison sentence unenforceable in UK. January 2025, when Siddiq resigned as City Minister. £3.9 billion, alleged total embezzlement being investigated. 2013, year of controversial nuclear deal with Russia. No extradition treaty, UK-Bangladesh meaning sentence cannot be enforced. Finally, let's talk about what might be the most significant long-term story in British politics right now: the remarkable rise of Nigel Farage and Reform UK. Just announced, Reform UK now claims to have more members than the Conservative Party. Think about that. A party that was only founded in 2018 that won just 5 seats in July's election now has a bigger membership than one of Britain's historic political parties. This is genuinely unprecedented in modern British politics. Reform's website shows they've crossed 133,000 members. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party had just 131,680 members eligible to vote in their recent leadership election that brought Kemi Badenoch to power. But membership is just one metric. The polling tells an even more dramatic story. Recent polls have shown Reform UK either level with or even ahead of the Conservatives in voting intention. Some surveys have put them in second place overall, behind only Labour. Nigel Farage is one of the most influential and controversial figures in modern British politics. He led UKIP for years, was a key architect of Brexit, and after a brief retirement from politics, came roaring back to lead Reform UK into this year's election. In July, Reform won 5 parliamentary seats. Farage himself finally became an MP at his 8th attempt, winning in Clacton. While 5 seats might not sound like much in a 650-seat parliament, Reform came third in the popular vote, ahead of the Liberal Democrats who won 72 seats. This exposed the brutal unfairness of Britain's first-past-the-post electoral system. Reform's appeal is multifaceted. They're capturing voters angry about immigration, legal and illegal. They're winning over people who feel the Conservative Party has betrayed conservative values. They're appealing to those frustrated with Labour's early stumbles in government. Crucially, Farage himself is a master communicator. Love him or loathe him, he connects with voters in a way most politicians simply can't. He speaks in plain English, he's not afraid of controversy, and he positions himself as anti-establishment despite being worth millions and having spent decades in politics. For the Conservative Party, this is an existential threat. Kemi Badenoch faces an uphill battle to win back voters who have shifted to Reform. The Tories are being squeezed, losing centre-right voters to Labour and right-wing voters to Reform. For Labour, Reform's rise is complicated. On one hand, a split right-wing vote helps them win seats. On the other hand, Reform is now targeting Labour in working-class constituencies, particularly in areas that previously voted for Brexit. Farage has said explicitly, "We are coming for you, Keir Starmer." For British politics more broadly, this represents a fundamental realignment. The two-party system that's dominated for over a century is crumbling. We're moving toward a more fragmented, multi-party system. That could mean more coalition governments, more instability, more difficulty getting things done. The real test comes in May next year with local elections across England. Reform is focusing on building local presence, learning from the Liberal Democrats' successful strategy of winning councils before winning Westminster seats. Looking further ahead to the next general election, likely in 2029, Reform hopes to capitalise on disillusionment with both Labour and the Conservatives. If they can maintain their poll ratings and build proper grassroots organisation, they could win dozens of seats. 133,000 plus, Reform UK membership claimed. 5 seats, Reform MPs currently in Parliament. Second place, Reform's position in some recent national polls. May 2025, crucial local elections test. Nigel Farage, leader since June 2024. So there you have it, 3 massive stories that are reshaping British politics right before our eyes. We've got a government facing serious questions about trust and transparency over the budget. We've got a former minister convicted of corruption overseas in a case that raises huge questions about ministerial vetting. And we've got an insurgent right-wing party that's growing faster than anyone expected and threatening to completely reshape British politics. What ties these stories together? I'd argue it's about trust, or the lack of it. Voters don't trust the government to tell them the truth about the economy. They don't trust the process that allowed someone with such complicated international connections into a sensitive government role. And millions are turning to Reform UK precisely because they don't trust the established political parties anymore. The next few weeks are absolutely crucial. We've got Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday where Starmer will face tough questions. We've got ongoing investigations into both the budget controversy and the Siddiq case. And we've got local elections on the horizon that could show whether Reform's poll success translates into actual votes. This is a government under pressure. This is an opposition that smells blood. And this is a political system that's being challenged from multiple directions at once. Thanks so much for watching today's UK Politics Briefing. If you found this useful, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next update. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about these developing stories. I'll see you next time. Stay informed, stay engaged, and as always, stay questioning.